the fragrance of the past. The morning sun stretched golden ribbons across the walls of Zainab's home, tracing familiar patterns over the colonnaded veranda, the pebble-strewn courtyard, and the edges of the low stone well where her mother used to sing while drawing water. Here, in the heart of Adu village, every tile whispered echoes of old laughter, of night fires and harvest songs, of her own bright childhood, now muffled beneath the heavy silence of her marriage. Zainab moved quietly, as always, her slender frame draped in a faded purple wrapper, the color once vibrant, now worn thin from years of ritual washing. Her long, chiseled face, with russet-brown skin and large, pensive eyes, was beautiful, a beauty that sometimes seemed like a disguise for her restlessness. She wrapped her hair in a simple scarf, no beads or gold, just the humility required of a wife who, after 7 years, had still not conceived a child. Her hands, graceful but marked with calluses, carried the tea tray toward the parlour. Along her arms, you could trace thin, white scars from playing as a girl in the mango groves, signs of life that persisted beneath the layers of expectation and sorrow. Beyond the lattice gate, boys' laughter and rooster crows signaled a new day in the village, but within these walls, old hope had curdled into something sharp and painful. The news breaks. Zainab's husband, Musa, sat in the parlour, his back straight, burly shoulders hunched with habitual authority. His skin was the color of roasted plantain, roughened from years in the family's grain trade, and his jaw bore the faint stubble of a careless morning. Once, his smile had been boyish, dimpled and gentle. Now, it flickered only when others watched. His eyes were hard, dark, and unforthcoming. She set the tray before him, pouring tea with deliberate calm. Musa offered a cursory, "Thank you," barely meeting her gaze. His new phone buzzed. It always did these days. He scrolled messily with a thick thumb, lips twisting in a private amusement. "Your tea, Musa," Zainab prompted softly. He grunted, then, without warning, set his phone aside, cleared his throat, and uttered the words that broke the world. "My father has given me approval. Safia moves in next week." Musa did not look up. "We will be married tomorrow evening. I expect you to prepare the home." The tea nearly slipped from Zainab's hand. She raised her eyes to her husband's face, searching for any shred of kindness or regret. She found none. His tone was casual, as if announcing the purchase of a new goat, not the end of his wife's dreams. "What do you mean?" Her voice trembled, barely louder than the ticking of the old clock on the wall. He lifted his gaze then, meeting her eyes without warmth. "A man must have sons. You have given me nothing. I cannot wait forever while you count moon cycles and hope in vain." There it was. Not just the announcement, but the wound, salted, displayed, pressed for pain. The mockery. That evening, the courtyard swelled with busy voices. Musa's family, his mother, robust and hawk-eyed, his older sister, glamorous and disdainful, his younger brother with the insolent lips, filled the home with laughter and talk of weddings. They cast glances at Zainab like she was an old chair kept for sentiment, not for need. Musa's laughter carried above the others, loud and sharp. "I am grateful for a fertile woman at last," he declared to the guests, not bothering to lower his voice. "Zainab has been enough for the waiting, but we all know patience cannot plant a lineage." There was laughter, short and callous, among the men. The women exchanged quick, veiled looks, some mortified, some satisfied. Zainab retreated into herself, her face a careful mask, mind running frantic with anger and shame. She returned to the kitchen, heart pounding, crushed by the weight of eyes, especially when Musa brought Safia, his new bride-to-be, through the gate later and gestured grandly at the home, as if showing off livestock. Her solitude. Night in Adu village fell like a thick cloth, muffling sound and wrapping sorrow tight. Zainab, alone on her prayer mat, wept soundlessly, her slender body rocking. Her prayers were jumbled, sometimes rising as plea, sometimes as accusation. She remembered when Musa first courted her, bringing oranges and sweet bread after her mother's funeral, promising never to let her feel alone. 7 years and many doctors later, his patience dissolved, then turned to contempt. Neighbors' whispers had grown sharper. Her childhood friends, now mothers, barely masked sympathy edged with relief. "There but for the mercy of God." The ache inside Zainab was not just for herself, but for the love that was once so earnest it could have moved mountains. Now, the mountain was Musa himself, cold, immovable. A confidant appears. The next day, Zainab visited the market, the familiar chaos comforting, women in headscarf haggling, children flashing gap-toothed smiles, the aroma of frying yams and roasting corn. She moved in a daze, gathering vegetables she no longer felt like she owned. Her oldest friend, Hadiza, a sturdy, round-faced woman with wide, empathetic eyes and a laugh that could drown sorrow, caught her by the wrist. "Zainab, you look like a ghost chased you," Hadiza whispered, steering her into the shadows between two yam stalls. When Zainab hesitated, voice thick with pride and pain, Hadiza shook her head. "Tell me the whole thing. Don't swallow this on your own." Zainab unspooled her heart, her words halting, eyes burning, hands knotted tight. Hadiza listened carefully, then drew her into a fierce embrace. "He mocks you for what's not in your hands? Does he think he alone is blameless? We all know stories. Listen, there's more to a woman than a womb." For the first time in days, Zainab felt the smallest embers of solace, the family pressures. But solace was brief. When she returned, Musa's mother was waiting by the gates, jewelry flashing, lips pressed in. Her voice was steel. "You must show respect to Safia. Teach her the ways of this house. No bitterness," she said. "A woman's value is in her patience as much as her stomach." Zainab did not reply. The older woman's stare lingered, weighing, before she clicked her tongue and waddled away. Inside, Musa and Safia sat close, their laughter punctuating the dusk. Safia was barely 20, soft-cheeked, her skin fresh and untouched by the dust of struggle. She was pretty, yes, but Zainab noted uncertainty in her wary glances, perhaps realizing that sharing a husband was not as simple as her mother had promised. But as the night deepened, Musa seemed determined to erase any dignity Zainab had left. He called for water, then rebuked her for its temperature. He joked about childless homes being holes where fortune seeps out. Zainab performed her duties with silence, hands neat, eyes dry, heart splitting. Cultural shadows. In the days that followed, Zainab felt the double-edged grip of her world's traditions, polygamy justified by scripture and custom, the shame of barrenness shouldered solely by women, families urging patience, priests preaching humility, friends offering quiet encouragement laced with warning. Do not curse your destiny, Zainab. It is God who folds a future. She saw the way neighbors' eyes flickered as she fetched water or greeted a child on the road. Once, she heard her own name woven into a song meant for a motherless wedding, a cool echo that brought tears she could only hide in the shelter of her bedroom. A flicker of defiance. But fire, when pressed long enough, sometimes shapes into resolve. Late at night, Zainab wrote in her mother's old journal. Her script was slow, careful. "My heart has known loss, but it has also known love. The world cannot tell me my worth." She found herself seeking out stories from old women at the well, women who, she learned, had endured their own trials and betrayals. Some had overcome. Some had simply survived. With each page, each whispered story, Zainab's spirit began to coil, tense but unbroken, ready to search for new meaning, or at least the strength to see another day through. New shadows in the house. The gates of the household stood open, and the sun poured over a courtyard trimmed in fresh flowers and shaded by papaya trees. Inside, Zainab moved with measured steps, her heart a tight drum against her ribs. The day had come for Musa to bring home his new wife. The scent of roasting meat hung in the air, and the clamor of visitors rose above the courtyard walls, neighbors with gifts, relatives in bright wrappers, children darting past with jeering little songs. Zainab greeted them all, her smile mild, her voice lined in practiced warmth, though inwardly she traced the edge of humiliation she would not let them see. Hadiza caught her in the passage, squeezing her hand with a strength that surprised them both. "You are not alone," her friend whispered. "They see you, but I see through to your heart." When Safia stepped through the threshold, Zainab noticed first the soft beauty of her skin, her nervous smile, and the way her eyes never quite settled. She wore a veil edged in gold, her bangles chiming softly. The relatives crowded her with welcome songs, glancing sidelong at Zainab to gauge her reaction. Musa beamed, pride smoothing his features as he led Safia forward, a performance of the community and a fresh cut along the seams of Zainab's soul. The dance of polygamy. The days that followed became a choreography of duties. Zainab rose before dawn, her movements as precise as a call to prayer. She roasted yams, arranged Musa's work clothes, swept the yard, and drafted lists of errands for Safia, who shadowed her, learning the rituals of her married home. In the cool of the dusk, Musa lounged in the courtyard, laughter echoing his friends' tease him about his new fortunes. "You have done well," said a cousin, "but let us see which woman brings you sons." There was a weight to the words, a judgment clinging to each syllable. Once, when Zainab served tea, Musa's gaze lingered too long on Safia. "You have brought new light here," he said loudly. Safia blushed, stammering thanks, but Zainab's hands remained steady. She would not give them the spectacle of a wounded wife. Instead, she sought comfort in her evening journaling, pouring out her loneliness and anger into the aged pages. Later, Safia approached her beneath the neem tree, twisting her scarf. "Sister, I want peace." "I did not mean," she trailed off, eyes wet. Zainab held her at arm's length, measuring her sincerity. "Peace is owned, not declared," she said quietly. "Time will teach us how to share this house." Rumors and rituals. Hushed conversations drifted from the market to the mosque. Zainab, now the lesser wife. Safia, favored and fertile. Musa, his status newly minted among the elders. Some women pitied Zainab, others envied even her waning position. Musa's mother instructed both wives on how to keep harmony, meaning, in practice, that Zainab was not to challenge, not to grieve in public. When Safia's belly began to swell, barely 2 moons passed, Musa paraded joy through the streets. He made offerings at the mosque, slaughtered a goat for the imam, and laughed long and loud during evening meals. Zainab, meanwhile, was given tasks she had always done, now with new urgency and the silent expectation of perfection. Privately, Zainab's grief grew sharper. Musa's mockery grew subtler but cut deeper. He would touch Safia's arm in Zainab's sight, joke about children's names, sometimes quip, "God's blessing finds those who wait, but not those who wait in vain." Lila, the neighbor, whispered to Zainab at the well, "Strength is not in bearing sons, but in surviving storms. One day they will tell your story, too." Breaking and beginning. The night the baby was born, a storm lashed the village. Neighbors crowded around the compound, and Musa's jubilation crackled above the thunder. Zainab kept to her quarters, reciting verses and clutching her mother's worn journal, tears streaming unchecked. It should have been despair, but as the storm raged, something broke inside her, a decades-old compliance, replaced by resolve. The following days, the compound swirled with visitors. Musa held the child proudly, Safia beaming through her exhaustion. No one sought Zainab's blessing, yet the younger women lingered at her doorway, seeking advice for their own new marriages, drawn by her calm and her silent strength. Hadiza found her there one evening, lamp flickering between them. "Will you leave?" she asked, gentle. Zainab shook her head. "No, this is my house. 2. Let them mock. I will teach myself to thrive, not merely endure." In the coming weeks, Zainab's presence altered, no longer ghost-like, but rooted, certain. She revived her mother's garden, read children's stories at dusk, shared wisdom of the women's circle despite her wounds. The sting of Musa's insults diminished, the community's poor Zainab quieted, replaced by rumors of her resilience. Even Safia, overwhelmed by motherhood, leaned on her elder wife's steadiness. One late afternoon, as the courtyard filled with laughter, not Musa's, but the children's and women's, Zainab realized she was still a vital thread in the colorful weave of village life. Her worth, she understood at last, was not determined by her womb, nor by Musa's pride, but by the dignity she chose each day and the gentle power of a heart unbroken. Dawn's pale light seeped through the woven curtains, settling softly on the walls of the little room Zainab had claimed as her own sanctuary within the sprawling compound. The wooden floorboards creaked beneath her bare feet as she moved quietly to the small table at the corner. There lay her mother's tattered journal, its pages worn and yellowed by years of whispered secrets. Today, as every new day, she sought strength from these fragments of her mother's past, words that mingled sadness with hope, loss with courage. Across the courtyard, the household had settled into a tentative rhythm. Safia was beginning to understand the unspoken rules that bound his home, the rituals she must observe and the spaces she could claim without inciting jealousy or contempt. Yet the shadows lingered, whispered conversations at the well, sidelong glances in the market stalls, and the slow, deliberate silencing of Zainab's own voice in her marital home. An unexpected visitor. While preparing the morning meal, a sudden knock startled Zainab. She opened the door to find Amina, the village midwife, standing with a basket of herbs and a knowing smile. "Peace be upon you, sister," Amina greeted, her eyes warm yet serious. "I heard of your strength. I have come to offer what I can, not just for your body but for your soul." Zainab welcomed her inside, heart fluttering with gratitude and caution. Amina's presence was balm, a reminder that resilience was not alone born. "You have suffered much," Amina said gently as she prepared a healing tea of bitter leaf and neem. "But remember, a woman's worth is woven through many threads beyond fertility, wisdom, courage, love, patience." Zainab nodded, sipping the warm bitterness. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to cradle hope. Tensions among women. Later that week, at the village gathering, tension surfaced palpably. The women congregated in a circle beneath the shade of the ancient Iroko tree, their voices hushed but charged. Safia arrived looking uncertain, clutching her child close. She sought support, but some elders whispered, "She holds a man's affection, but her heart is young and easily swayed." Zainab, too, attended. Her presence was both a testament and a challenge. She offered words, not of rivalry, but of shared strength. "Each woman walks her own path under the same sun," Zainab murmured, meeting Safia's gaze. "We must stand not against, but beside one another. There is fierce power in this." A ripple of surprise passed through the circle. Some nodded slowly, others averted eyes. In subtle ways, the fabric of sisterhood began to fray, then mend. Musa's changing attitude. Back in the household, Musa's demeanor began to shift. The initial thrill of his new marriage faded, revealing cracks beneath the bravado. One evening, as Zainab served dinner, Musa summoned her quietly. "What do you want, Zainab?" His voice was rough, tempered by an unfamiliar uncertainty. She met him steadily. "I want respect, the kind a wife deserves, regardless of children." He laughed, bitter. It is easy to speak of respect when one holds none. Yet something softened in his eyes, a glimmer of regret, perhaps, or the weight of his own fractured pride. From then on, his mockery grew quieter, replaced by occasional gestures, a cup of tea left on her nightstand, a less frequent jab, a gaze less dismissive. Though the wounds remained, a fragile truth settled. Finding her voice, Zainab began attending the women's circle regularly, her confidence blossoming with each shared story and prayer. The village women, once wary, found respect in her resilience and gentle wisdom. She taught young girls to weave baskets, told stories of their ancestors' courage, and quietly defied the silence imposed upon her. When a heated argument erupted one evening over a local dispute, Zainab spoke firmly, commanding attention. Her voice, steady and clear, swept through the crowd, proving that even without sons, a woman could wield power. The seed of new hope. In the smallest moments, hope grew. Safia sought her counsel more freely. The two women, once strangers and rivals, found threads of friendship. Hadizah's laughter brightened Zainab's evenings. Amina's healing herbs soothed both body and spirit. And beneath the heavy skies of Adu village, Zainab, once broken by loss and scorn, began to stitch herself anew, a tapestry of resilience and quiet dignity, ready to face whatever storm still awaited. New rhythms at dawn. Days unfolded, braided with tension and cautious hope through the corridors of Musa's household. Each dawn, Zainab greeted her new sense of resolve like a secret sun, warming places left cold by betrayal. Her steady movements, once purely driven by habit, now carried intent, sweeping the yard with care, tending the kitchen garden, pausing to greet neighbors with eyes that met theirs without fear. She wore her dignity as a subtle shield, her wrapper neatly tied, hair adorned with a single, graceful bead, a gift from her late mother. The bead's blue shimmer rested above her brow, a reminder that she still belonged to herself. Safia, meanwhile, learned the fragile diplomacy of polygamous life. Her youth and the gentle curves of her cheeks, so praised in the early days, now seemed vulnerable in the shadow of new motherhood. She looked to Zainab not just for guidance with housework or Musa's routines, but for kindness during sleepless nights and the fussy cries of her infant. Zainab, despite old wounds, could not resist a soft tug of compassion. When Safia faltered, she shared herbal teas and old lullabies, her tone firm but her touch patient. The village festival. Fest season arrived, painting the village in color and song. Children paraded in paper crowns, young men competed in drumming contests, and elders told the moonlit tales that held Adu village together. Musa, eager to display his family's status, organized a feast. He instructed both wives to work in harmony, expecting the home to reflect his power and wealth. Rumors trailed Zainab as she shopped in the market, the woman scorned, the barren wife. Older women eyed her with either pity or veiled respect. But as Zainab swept through the stalls, her jaw set and gaze clear, even the bitterest tongues grew silent. She greeted each vendor by name, recalled childhood memories to a blind palm oil seller, and shared a private joke with Hadiza about the pompous new imam's clumsy dancing. Back home, Zainab orchestrated preparations with unassailable grace. She wove Safia into the rhythm, showing her how to best season the jollof, when to boil the yams, which plates were reserved for honored guests. They moved in a fragile truce, neither friends nor rivals but necessary companions on the same uncertain road. The night of tests. When guests poured into the compound, laughter and music washing over the stones, Musa walked with Safia at one side, Zainab trailing with food and drink. The baby, swaddled in content, was passed from hand to hand, praised for chubby limbs and bright eyes. It was late in the evening when Musa, slightly inebriated and surrounded by his peers, let his pride flare once more. A man's honor is in his legacy, he declared loudly, casting a veiled glance at Zainab as Safia blushed, and I am thrice blessed for a home full of laughter at last. The word stung. Silence ricocheted among the gathering, some guests shifting uncomfortably, others smirking with understanding of Musa's edge. Safia fidgeted, eyes brimming with shame. Zainab, face unreadable, simply turned to refill a guest's cup. In that fleeting moment, her quiet composure spoke volumes, a challenge met with dignity rather than outburst. Afterwards, Amina found her in the kitchen, laying hands on Hayes firmly. You are iron-wrapped in velvet, Zainab. Every woman here sees you, whether they admit it or not. Hadiza, catching their whispered exchange, chimed in, You make room for yourself every day, though without his respect. That is victory. Seeds of mutual understanding. The following week, a fever swept through the compound. Safia's child became ill, racked with coughs and burning skin. At Musa's frantic pleas, it was Zainab who took charge, preparing herbal steams, sponging the baby's brow, chanting prayers in the night. Fear knitted them together. Safia clung to Zainab, her eyes red with exhaustion and humility. When at last the fever broke and the child slept peacefully, Safia wept. You could have left us in our struggle. Why did you help? Zainab's answer was simple. Pain does not know whose child is in its grip. I am a woman before I am a wife. From that night, a quiet alliance crept into their routines. Safia deferred to Zainab during arguments with Musa, and Zainab accepted her apologies, unspoken as they were, in the shared hours nursing the fragile boy back to health. The power of voice. Gradually, Zainab's influence in the community deepened. She became a bridge among women, young brides, quarrelsome co-wives, single mothers. All looked to her as a source of calm in the swirling tumult of tradition and expectation. Her stories by dusk, her skill with healing plants, her measured counsel when disputes broke between neighboring households, all built Zainab's legacy from resilience rather than resentment. Musa's mockery dulled, replaced by a stony silence that was both a punishment and an admission. At the men's gatherings, he spoke less of his wives and more of his trade, nursing a quiet frustration that, somewhere along the way, power had slipped from his hands. But in the compound, where laughter now mingled with children's voices, and neighbors sent gifts of millet or soap, Zainab flourished, not as a wife who failed, but as a woman who persevered. Closing light. On a gentle evening, just before the rains returned, Zainab sat beneath the neem tree, watching Safia and the boy play. The late sunlight cast everything in hunted relief, the long grass waving, the air thick with the scent of gardenia. Hadiza rested at her side, their silence companionable, content. "I thought I would break," Zainab confessed softly, eyes fixed on the sky's purple edge. "But now, I think I was only shedding what couldn't carry me any longer." Hadiza smiled, squeezing her friend's hand. Roots grow deeper after storms. As a call to prayer echoed over the rooftops and Adu village prepared for night, Zainab walked back to the house, stronger, whole, more herself than she could ever have imagined in the day her heart first broke. The courtyard, once empty of laughter, was now full of forgiveness, of small joys, and of the enduring power that blossomed when a woman decides she is enough. The dry season's reckoning. Heat settled over Adu village like a woven blanket, the harmattan's dust gilding every leaf and rooftop in pale gold. Zainab woke before the cocks crow, the air close and still in the compound. The season demanded patience. Wells ran shallow, tempers shorter, and the daily needs of two wives and a bustling household stretched even Zainab's careful planning. Still, she moved with steady resolve, her voice firm, her eye keen to every crack in the plaster and quarrel in the kitchen. Safiya's son, Ibrahim, learned to toddle in the dust, laughter bubbling even as the sun glared overhead. Zainab taught him songs and tricks with wooden toys. The child's hands reached for her, clinging to her wrapper, easily trusting her scent and calm presence. This small, sticky affection was balm, reminding her of quiet blessings she had never imagined as a girl, and which no one could name as failure. Safiya grew stronger, too, her confidence nurtured by Zainab's patient mentorship and their midnight confidences. Sometimes, as they shelled beans or swept the courtyard after dusk, laughter came easily, and the memory of rivalry faded to a distant bruise. Musa's diminishing authority. Musa felt the new alignment in his home. It unsettled him. The former order, with its clear lines of power and obedience, had given way to a quieter current, one that didn't answer to the harshest voice. Resentment prickled beneath his pride. He demanded more from both wives, often inventing new chores or reason for displeasure. But the women's growing alliance undermined these efforts. When Musa's tone turned cruel, Safiya would quietly call Ibrahim to her side and leave, forcing him into an audience of one with Zainab, who met each taunt with patient silence or a question posed with careful grace. In the village, however, change was acknowledged in subtle ways. At evening gatherings, Zainab was often asked for advice. Elders noted her skill in conflict, her knowledge of herbs, and her storytelling, which brought laughter even from grumbling old men. When a neighbor's child fell ill, it was Zainab they fetched, not Musa, not even Amina, the midwife. Slowly, her value outstripped the measurements of marriage and motherhood set by tradition. Ancestral calls. One evening, as the harmattan winds died down, Zainab was summoned by her father's eldest sister, Fatima, a matriarch whose judgment could tilt the scales of community opinion. Zainab washed her face and presented herself, spine ramrod straight, in a wrapper the color of river clay. Fatima's hut was scented with earth and ginger. The old woman's eyes were sharp, the lines around her mouth deep. She motioned Zainab to sit on a mat beside her. "My child," Fatima intoned, "you are not without worth, nor have you shamed the family, no matter what they say. But patience has its season too. You must not let bitterness poison your spirit. Use what God has given you. When the world would close a door, open a window for yourself." Fatima pressed a small, cloth-bound, guidance in the market's haze. The following morning, Zainab cradled Fatima's words in her mind as she walked the dusty road to the bustling market. Fatima's gift, a small pouch filled with fragrant kola nuts and a folded square of hand-spun cloth, rested against Zainab's chest. She moved slowly, feeling the eyes of villagers, some warm, others calculating. The heat shimmered off metal trays of tomatoes and woven baskets brimming with melon. Hadiza spotted her and rushed over, her laughter spilling through the din. "Come, help me chase down these unfair yam sellers." Zainab smiled, grateful for the familiar tug of camaraderie. The two bartered, teased, and gathered gossip as naturally as breathing. Zainab sensed that the simple act of walking beside Hadiza, head high, spirit unbowed, was an answer to every doubter and rumor-monger watching. Storms within and without. Thrumming clouds built above the village that week, promising the first rain of the season. Shadows pooled beneath the baobab trees as thick as the tensions at home. Musa's temper had soured, distrustful and moody. He criticized Zainab's meals, barked at Safiya, and rarely stayed home past dark, lingering instead with friends who nursed their own grievances about unruly wives and changing customs. One night, thunder rattled the roof and Musa returned drunk, his voice raised high enough for the children next door to hear. "You think you can run this house? Both of you, swelling with pride while I am made a fool. Zainab, is this the respect you always demand?" His words pitched and surged over Safia's frightened apologies and Zainab's steady silence. Zainab met Musa's outburst with a calm that surprised even herself. She did not protest, nor did she cower. Once he stormed out, Safia sobbed quietly, and Zainab pulled her close. "We do not answer his wounds with our own. Let him carry his storms outside," she murmured. The rain broke early the next morning, pounding the red earth and cooling the walls. For a brief moment, the house felt cleansed. The women scrubbed the floors together, washing away the dust and something else, a layer of unspoken resentment, replacing it with silent accord. A change in the wind. Word reached the compound that Zainab had been asked to lead the next women's gathering, an honor traditionally reserved for elder mothers. Musa heard this from his own mother and railed, angry with what he called embarrassment. Zainab, however, accepted the invitation quietly. She prepared a lesson on healing herbs and wove her story into the fabric of her teaching, making space for every silent heart in the village to find strength. The night before the gathering, Fatima visited again. She watched Zainab carefully as they lit a lamp together. "There will always be those who test your spirit and those who try to define your worth," Fatima said. "But you must define yourself. Even if you are the only one, do not stop." Zainab felt the words settle deep. She resolved that, no matter Musa's scorn or the community's watching eyes, her voice and actions would be a testament, not to pain, but to dignity. The gathering. On the day of the event, the women circled beneath the sprawling canopy of the oldest tree in Adu village. Young wives listened wide-eyed, grandmothers nodded knowingly, girls sat at their mothers' feet. Zainab told stories of women who healed with their knowledge, who were childless but cherished, wrong but unbroken. Her voice was clear, neither bitter nor boastful. She led prayers for rain, for forgiveness, for unity, and laughter soon threaded through the assembly, genuine, unforced. Afterward, as dust bloomed lavender and blue, many women approached to clasp Zainab's hand, pressing hopeful requests for advice or simply gratitude into her palms. Even Safia stood close, drawing comfort from her co-wife's acceptance and generous heart. A new vision of home. By moonrise, Zainab looked over the quiet house, feeling the pulse of transformation. The sleeping form of little Ibrahim, Safia's soft breathing beside him, and the unbroken rhythm of night sounds lulled her into peace. Even Musa's footsteps were softer, his anger spent, for now, by the shift he could not name. Zainab understood, in that hush, that her story was no longer about loss or rivalry. It had become about strength claimed quietly, victories won within, and the slow building of a legacy defined by compassion far greater than any wound could diminish. She went to her journal and wrote, "We are more than what we are denied. My journey is not measured in children or in the eyes of men, but in the roots I put down and the shade I offer, even in the harshest sun." The harvest promise. The rains had come and gone, soaking Adu village with renewal. Green shoots pressed through the red earth, and fields grew thick with millet and cassava. In the softened quiet that followed each storm, Zainab felt her heart slowly stretch back to hope. The air thrummed with bird song and children's shouts, voices carrying from one compound to another as if the entire village were waking from a long slumber. Life inside Musa's home had settled into a gentler rhythm. Safia, her confidence growing, now managed her tasks deftly and balanced motherhood with grace. Some days she watched Zainab closely, as if drawing courage from the older woman's composure. Their fragile understanding, once marked by wary glances and nervous courtesy, had ripened into something sturdier, a sisterhood stitched by hardship. One morning, after tending to the goats, Safia paused at Zainab's side in the garden, gently pressing her hand to Zainab's arm. "You taught me that kindness can soften the sharpest words," she said, voice low. "I pray every night for your peace. For both of us." Zainab could only nod, feeling the ache of forgiveness loosening inside her chest. Musa's dilemma. Musa, too, had changed. He still carried himself with an air of authority, but the edge of mockery had dulled. He lingered longer in the compound after work and sometimes even sought Zainab's advice on small matters, a troublesome business debt, a sick uncle, the approaching yam ceremony. If there was regret for the cruelty he'd unleashed, it was barely spoken. But Zainab began to accept this, that love sometimes returns through humility, not apology. Despite the peace at home, Musa's standing in the village had begun to shift. The men, noticing Zainab's rising influence among the women and Safiya's evident dependence, made jokes about a changed house. At first Musa bristled, but as he saw the way women in his courtyard wove laughter with work and disagreement with reconciliation, something softened in him, a small pride in the steadiness he had once threatened to undo. Council of Women. At the height of harvest, Zainab was chosen to represent younger women at the Council of Village Matriarchs. It was an honor unprecedented for someone in her position, a wife without child. She stood beneath the ancient fig, aware of whispers and side glances, but met each gaze with warmth and clarity. "We all plant," she told them, hands unfolding a basket of dried beans. "Some seeds yield fruit, others only shade, and some become the ground from which another's harvest grows. We must count every season a blessing, even if what we gather is not what we first prayed for." The assembly agreed. Later, several approached her for advice, a bride shamed by her in-laws, a grandmother anxious about her grandson's prospects, a widow who grieved but longed for purpose. Safiya's fears. The harvest brought joy and also anxieties. Safiya began worrying that a second child might not come as quickly as the first. She confessed her fears at dusk, while the sky burned pink and gold over the rooftops. "What if Musa grows impatient?" she whispered as they shelled groundnuts, brows knitted. "I remember how quickly he turned from you. I am frightened, sister." Zainab set her work down and took Safiya's hand. "Fear has its place, but do not let it build your home. You are more than your womb, more than Musa's mood. Hold fast to your goodness. I will stand with you." Safiya's tears were silent, but they left her steadier. The bond between the two women deepened, and across the wall, neighbors noted the change. Two co-wives sharing laughter, working together, standing side by side in prayer. Small victories. Time became Zainab's quiet ally. She healed a neighbor's festering wound with a poultice of leaves and honey. She led the women's group in a song for rain that was credited for ending a long dry spell. She eased quarrels, giving counsel that was both gentle and unwavering. Hadiza, always Zainab's anchor, watched in admiration. "You have turned shame into wisdom, Zainab," she said over thick, sweet tea. "The village sees it. More importantly, you see it." The arrival of news. One evening, a messenger from Zainab's birth family arrived, bearing word. Her younger brother Ayoba's wife had given birth to twins. Joy pricked at Zainab's heart. Happiness for her family, but also an unmistakable sense of letting go. She sent a gift of gardenia soap and wrote a note. "May your home be a haven of laughter and light. Your joy increases the whole world's measure." As she watched the messenger vanish into the dust, Zainab understood. Her happiness no longer depended on a single hope or wound. Her story, by then, belonged to the village. It pulsed in shared labor, in songs at dusk, in children's footsteps across the threshold, and in the steady return of her own self-respect. Closure and continuance. That night, as the moon hung low and full over Adu village, Zainab sat quietly on the porch. Safiya joined her, baby on hip, both watching the shadows merge into the cool silence. Without words, Zainab felt an immense peace, a sense that though her life had not turned as the stories often promise, it had become something formidable and good. The wound from Musa's betrayal no longer ruled her days. The pain yielded, like old earth, to new growth, patient and real. In the hush, a single nightingale called, a hopeful, haunting note, reminding her that survival and flourishing were, in themselves, a kind of victory. The Festival of Reconciliation. Adu village prepared for its annual Festival of Reconciliation, a time when old grievances were aired and new bonds crafted under the forgiving gaze of lanterns and music. Zainab rose with the dawn, ears full of the gentle bustle outside, the hammering of tent poles, laughter from children stringing up garlands, the scent of frying akara drifting through open windows. This year, the elders approached Zainab to help lead the welcoming committee, acknowledging her gift for peacemaking. She spent the day moving among the crowds, her wrapper catching the sunlight, her head high as she guided young women in braiding flowers, helping mothers soothe squabbling children, and directing older men in the setup of long feasting tables. Safia worked quietly beside her, the walls between them undramatically replaced by partnership. Together, they welcomed guests and prepared savory rice, laughter and easy conversation threading between instructions. Ibrahim, Safia's little boy, toddled among the dancers. Even Musa, seeing the community drawn to the warmth of his courtyard, wore a softer face. As dusk descended, drummers circled the village square. A hush fell when Zainab stepped forward, no longer the invisible wife, but a vital voice. She spoke calmly. "Tonight, let the old pain be seen, not hidden. Let us make space for each other's healing." The night of truth. Tradition called for each household to offer sign of reconciliation. Musa, glancing from his wives to the gathering crowd, surprised all by stepping forward. "I have been harsh," he said simply. "I thought a man's worth was measured in sons. But tonight I see, home is built by the hands of everyone in it. Zainab, forgive the hurt I caused, for you have given this family its peace." His words were not perfect or poetic, but they loosened something deep within Zainab. The crowd exhaled, a living, collective sigh of relief. Safia's hand found Zainab's, squeezing with gratitude and awe. Later, around the fire, Zainab spoke privately with Musa. "Our wounds do not disappear with a speech," she said, voice gentle yet clear. "But we can choose, every day, what fills the space around them, resentment or care." Musa nodded, his gaze finally steady. "I am learning." Weaving a new family. Life after the festival unfolded with fresh color. Zainab and Safia ran the household with growing joy and shared responsibility. The stories Zainab passed on to neighborhood girls were repeated back to her by laughing children under the mango trees. Ibrahim clung to her skirts as often as to his mother's, and new neighbors asked her help to settle disputes or bless their fields. Musa spent more time with his family, not as a distant overseer, but as a present infallible man. He took Ibrahim to the fields and sat in on women's story circles, listening, awkwardly at first, then with real intent. Hadiza, ever the anchor, whispered to Zainab one twilight, "You remade your world, one disappointment at a time. That is a blessing." A letter from far away. Late in the season, a letter arrived from Zainab's brother Ioba. With careful strokes, he thanked her for her wisdom and generosity, her soap, her prayers, and the steady example she set. "The twins thrive," he wrote. "Your blessing is felt here, as surely as rain on dry ground. Know, sister, that your story brings hope to more hearts than you'll ever know." Reading these words at her bedside, Zainab smiled, tears brimming but unshed. She realized she was no longer waiting for life to fulfill a single, lost dream. She had become the thread holding together a tapestry richer than she had ever imagined. New beginnings, old roots. On the last night of the festival, Zainab and Safia sat side by side beneath the stars, leaning back against the old neem tree. They listened to the songs of their mothers, carried by the air, blending into the laughter of their children. "Do you regret anything?" Safia asked, voice soft. Zainab's eyes traced a glow of lanterns across the dark. "Regret is not for those who survive. We plant what we can and trust what grows. No matter the pain, I would not trade the woman I have become." The village hushed, listening for the next song to rise. The fire crackled, and in its light, Zainab's courage shone, not as armor, but as gentle illumination, guiding her from a life of endured sorrow into one of chosen hope.